Hey everybody, welcome to Art Talk Wednesday. I know, in case any of you are a little confused, it is indeed Wednesday. My name is Jackie G and I'm with Gwartzman's Art Supplies in Toronto. As some of you know by our ads, we are actually in an artist studio today, so it's very exciting for us to be outside of the usual space that we're in. I'm going to get right to our interview today with Phoebe, and I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about herself. I do have questions, so I hope that we'll be able to answer some of the questions that you might have. If you do have questions, today is just to talk to Phoebe and get to know her. If all of you are very excited about it, let us know, and we'll do a follow-up with Phoebe, and that way you can ask all of your technical questions. So again, we're in the studio today with Phoebe Todd-Parrish. She is a printmaker extraordinaire. I'll tell you that just by reading her CV, I was so blown away and absolutely in awe and a little bit intimidated. But it is amazing to read all about her, and you can see that on her website if you'd like. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I can go and ask some of the questions?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Phoebe, as Jackie said, and I'm a printmaker, artist, and this is my studio here. I'm lucky to have a studio space in Toronto and that I share with my godfather, so we'll probably show you a little bit of it later. But yeah, I've been doing printmaking since I took a class in undergrad. I went to York for my BFA, and then I did my MFA in printmaking at the University of Alberta, and went to Australia for a little bit, came back home, and then, yeah, I've kind of just been here with developing Flycatcher Press and my art practice since then.
So you said that, first question that I just thought of from what you just said, a lot of us took printmaking in like grade 8 or, high school. Did you take it then as well? Do you remember that?
I think I always say that I think the first printmaking I ever did was like a grave rubbing. Like, yeah, I feel like everyone used to do that. I don't know whether kids still do that anymore, like with a crayon. But then in high school, I definitely did a line of cut at some point in art class, but not really anything beyond that. Sometimes I meet students and they're like, I did screen printing, or we have a press in my high school, and that's cool, but we did not have that.
So you did mention that you graduated from University of Alberta in 2018, and you have a master's in fine art in printmaking. You have an undergrad degree in visual arts and English literature from York University, and you have an MA in English literature.
I do.
That's a really varied degree. So I guess my question, I was an English lit major at York as well, a long time ago. Yeah. But my question is, do you find that your English literature degree, does it influence the work that you do?
I think so. I think that I did both and was interested in doing like a master's in both because I was interested in books and like book arts specifically. So there are a lot of kind of well-known authors that you would know that like started out kind of also doing the printing themselves. So I think that's kind of what I was interested in, and also like the book as a contained art form and being both an object that it has been like thought about, designed, printed in a specific way, but then also like the actual content, which could be, it often is, literature or poetry or whatever. So yeah, I guess that was the connection for me. And I didn't think I wanted to do art, but I just did a double major, and then that's kind of more the path that I ended up taking, but I still like love English. Yeah.
Do you collect any books that have, not only because of the typeface, which we're going to talk about later, but also because of the decorative arts that are in a lot of the older books?
Yeah, definitely. I think at some point, I don't even remember whether it was in an English class or an art class in my undergrad, but I know during a print class we went to Coach House Books in Toronto, and at the same time I was taking like an experimental poetry class, and so we were learning about like B.P. Nichol, who I love, and so that maybe that experience was kind of like a both. And my dad is also a writer and editor, so he had all these things from when he did English, and he gave me all his beautiful old books, and you know, like the first edition of like a Michael Ondaatje book, and this weird collection of Czech poems that were all printed at Coach House, and like they are kind of art and poetry. So yeah, I liked that mix, I guess.
Yeah, that's you know, interesting. It's something that we don't always think about. So your studio name is Flycatcher Press. So if you want to check it out, it is called Flycatcher Press. Where did the name come from?
Yeah, it's a vain origin story. It's just Phoebe. My first name is a type of bird, and it belongs to the flycatcher family. Oh. It's a pretty boring bird. It's just like a brown sparrow-looking thing.
Well, we're not judging the bird, are we?
Yeah, but it sounds cool. Flycatcher, you know, yeah. I don't know. So yeah.
Okay, no, I like that. Okay, that's great. And what made you decide to open your own studio? What prompted it?
I guess I think I was trying to think of like my art practice as Phoebe Todd-Parrish, and then prints that I wanted to make more like accessible and maybe make larger editions that I could sell and people would actually buy, like normal people, not just like art collectors, or you know, you make a couple and you show it in an exhibition. But so trying to think about how to have both of those things, or to like make a brand, I guess. Like I don't like that word necessarily, but yeah. And so to try and separate the two ways of working or making art and selling art. So I guess, and then the studio, I don't know, it just kind of felt like it needed a name. Flycatcher Press.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you recently opened up your own little shop, correct?
Yeah, well, I have
a space.
I have a little booth at Arts Market on the Danforth. That's just like very, very recent. And I do some wholesale just with like local businesses in Toronto, so like Kid Icarus, Spacing Store, and Secret Planet. They all sell my prints, which is nice. And so many people who I talk to are like, I've seen your work, and they always saw it at one of those places. So I think like a physical store or presence is really important.
Well, which is actually kind of interesting, because I saw you on Instagram.
Right, yeah.
And I started following you, and that's when I reached out for you to do a print of our store.
Yes.
So it was, you know, same idea that we just sort of found you, or I found you organically, I guess.
Yeah.
Because you kept popping up.
Yeah. Just do it all the time.
Yeah. Which is not a bad thing. I mean, that's you know, that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of your processes. What excites you about printmaking? What gets you up every day to want to come into this studio and work?
I guess the process. I think if you're going to be a printmaker instead of other drawing, you know, just drawing, painting, things like that, like all of those things can be a part of printmaking, but then making the matrix that you have to then print from, there's just a lot of steps, and I actually like physically doing those things and repeating it. It's, you know, maybe cliche, but it's still, you know, it's still magical. Like I think every time you finish a line of block or something, and you make the first one, you're like, oh, it's actually way better than I thought it was going to be. And I always tell students that, like, they're always like, oh, it's going to be ugly. And I'm like, it's going to be nice. Like, just wait. It'll look good. So I think just, yeah, that there's a lot of possibilities to change things, even though people think it's also like permanent. In some ways it is, but you can still like add, or maybe you make something and it turns into something else. And, yeah.
So is that why you decided to go into printmaking as opposed to other forms of art?
I think so. Yeah, and I think, like, to be honest, I think when I was an undergrad, like, if I took other art classes, it seemed like we were just expected to know how to draw or paint, and no one really showed you how to do it. Whereas like printmaking, you have to learn how to do it. You have to learn the steps and follow the steps, or else it just won't work, or it won't turn out, or you'll hurt yourself, or whatever. So I think just I liked that part of it, and then maybe it just became that. So who knows? Like if I had had a different teacher or experience, maybe.
Well, I guess you also like the structure of it too.
Yeah,
because there is structure. You have to follow the pattern of not only starting with the print or the base, and then you can sort of get creative when you're going to your inks and papers and you know, changing things as you go. Yes,
and I think that's, you know, painting or something like where you're not sure when it's finished. Like you can always do a bit more or something. With printmaking, it's like, okay, it's got to be done. At a certain point, it has to be done because you're going to make an edition where they all have to be the same. So you can't do anything else. I know that's kind of like contradicting what I just said, but like you have to say it's done in a weird way. So I think, I do like that part too.
Can you go, just because I just thought of it, can you go back to one of your lino cuts if you wanted to and make a change in it? Or once that's finished, that is finished?
I mean, like technically, you know, best practice, whatever, you wouldn't be able to change something about your lino block and then like continue printing that block and call it the same thing. It would have to be like pretty significant change and then be totally different print.
Okay.
So you could cut it up into like 500 different pieces and like jigsaw it and make an edition of that or something, but
Okay.
But I mean, it's all technical, so it's only if you're like following all the old school rules that you can do something like that.
So just touching on printmaking, lino cutting for a second, you know, I've watched you on your Instagram, and I've watched a lot of videos. Is there ever a point? Have you ever had that experience where you've gotten towards the end, and you nick it? Like it just sort of, what happens? What do you do?
Yeah, I definitely don't make that many mistakes, which sounds terrible, but I think you get used to it. I think also like you always start. There's just certain things you do. Like I always start with the sign if it's like a lino cut, like something that's obviously going to be wrong. If you know, cut off an E on a sign or whatever, people are going to be like, oh, it just says hamburger, you know, instead of or whatever. Then it's obvious, but if you start with that hard part, then starting over is not a big deal. But yeah, I guess I just take my time. Most of the time I don't do a drawing beforehand. I just like work with the photo, and then the carving is like the drawing. And some people would say like, oh, you should never do it that way, but that's the way I do it. So yeah.
But it's also being, I guess, it's like painting or anything else. So you have to be calm when you're doing it. You got to be a little bit relaxed. You're going to go in and then once you get started, it sort of just all flows.
Yes. And I think like you do have to, I don't think that I'm a super type A person where like everything has to be perfect. Like if something is a little bit weird, it's okay, you know, then maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. It's good in a human way instead of like too perfect.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense to everyone when they're working on something. Yeah, it's good. So I noticed that during COVID, with us at least, that there was suddenly a huge interest in, and I'll go with lino prints right now. We had suddenly a lot of people who were very interested. I'm sure a lot of the people that are watching today or will watch it afterward also felt that creative, they suddenly had a lot of creative juices, and we just noticed a lot of people got into lino printing. Did you notice that in the more recent years, that there's a greater interest and appreciation for that type of art?
Yeah, it's so hard to say because I feel like my kind of test for that is just like what you see on the internet, but that's like maybe that's showing you only what you want to see kind of thing. but I think it makes sense to me that people were really interested in it during the pandemic because it takes time and people had time to do stuff and you couldn't go anywhere. And so I definitely think it was, definitely interest in my presence online, I feel like was really a lot of people were seeing things and interacting with things in a different way, just like higher volume during the pandemic for sure. Like I did a couple online markets and they were wild. Yeah.
Well, have you found that there's more students interested in printmaking now?
It's hard to say. So I teach at Sheridan and sessionally at OCAD. And so at Sheridan, the first year class, they have to take like one of each discipline. So it's hard to say whether they're there because they're really interested. I think there are a lot of people who are, it's better. Second year is like a better like test of like, oh, how many people go from first year to second year? And I think people are interested. I think it definitely is like a personality type, and people who, in school anyways, like a lot of times, like I also work with Open Studio, and that's like a shared studio environment. And printmaking kind of has to be a shared studio environment for most ways. Like I'm lucky that I have this studio that's my own kind of thing, but usually if you don't have the space to put something, you have to get used to working around people, which I think I also like. And I think that's also partly probably why I went down the path of printmaking as opposed to like painting or drawing, because it is like a communal thing that you have to ask other people questions and you learn a lot from your peers, and actually physically being together in the studio is an important part of that. So I think the interest, a lot of the time, people might start out thinking, oh, this is just a cool process, but then the ones that stick to it are like, I like all the other stuff that comes with printmaking, like hanging out.
Well, that's good. But also when you're doing those really large prints, you need someone else to take the other side and help you lift it too.
Yeah, definitely. There's just so many reasons that you need each other. And even if that's just like an online community, like even if you are just printing at home on your kitchen table, the chances of you like having to ask other people questions or like other artists being willing to help you is nice, because there's like a good amount of people where it's not overwhelming, like, but it feels like a small community in a way. Yeah, I don't know. Did that answer the question?
Well, I've noticed that there's artists all over the world now posting their work, and I guess that's where the community is small, but it's actually quite large, because now you've got this access to all these artists that you may not have seen before, or you may have heard about them, but now you can actually see their space or what they do.
Yeah, definitely.
So it makes it a larger, everything in art materials is actually a very small community.
Right.
But at least it shows you that there's a broader community that's worldwide. You're not the only one in, let's say Canada or Ontario or Toronto. It's much larger than that.
Yes.
Even if it is still a small group of people who are using the product.
Yeah, you want both, I think,
So I wanted to ask you, do you think that, do you find carving relaxing? I know I mentioned it before.
Yeah, it depends. It depends if it's on a deadline. It's not relaxing. I think I do really enjoy carving, because it's kind of, when you carve the same subject or like focus on the same subject or similar subjects, then whether it's carving or drawing or painting or anything else, like you sort of get into this rhythm where you're like, okay, I have this set of patterns or marks that I know I can use as options, and then it's all about like balancing the composition. So it's kind of, it's not, I don't want to say it's somewhere between like being mindful and like also being thoughtless. Like you can do both at the same time and just kind of let it go, I guess. I don't know.
Except when you're starting with the sign and you have to make sure that you're not going to cut off the R from the word hamburger.
But even that, it's like, it might not be, I guess like nothing is relaxing when you're first learning it because you're worried about messing it up, but then after you've done it enough times, it's then it's relaxing. Yeah, but you can't carve faster tomorrow than you can today. Like, besides knowing what marks are good, there are certain technical things maybe you get better at. So like you can select the right tool faster, but the actual carving, it's not like I'm doing it faster than I was 3 years ago, really. So that's why doing it under a deadline is bad.
Well, we all have deadlines.
yeah. You need to just respect the time it takes.
So there are a lot of different types of what we would call printmaking. Which is your favorite?
Yeah, I've always loved relief. So relief is the umbrella of like, it includes letterpress. So letterpress is a relief process. It's just where you're inking the top surface and there's a subsurface that is lower down that doesn't receive ink. So like letterpress is relief, but so is lino cut, so is wood cut. All those things. And but I like everything. Like the first class that I took that made me want to take printmaking was stone lithography at York, and I loved it. That's a litho, so that's a plate litho. So it's more drawing, like traditional feeling. I love screen printing as well. Probably the two I do the most are relief and screen printing. I like screen printing because it's very versatile. Like you can print on anything, it's fast, it's inexpensive. Like the inks I use are water soluble. So like if you were gonna become a printer and only set up a little studio in your room or basement or something, I think screen printing actually is a good choice because it's very versatile.
Yeah, but these days now with all the things you can get to assort all your product, lino printing also falls into there because you can keep everything very clean and sorted for you.
Definitely.
So you don't need a huge workspace either.
No. Yeah, I think both are very conducive to being able to do it at home, whereas like etching or litho, like there isn't really I guess you could try to print them with a spoon or something at home, but really you need access to a press. But the like relief and screen, you could definitely figure out how to do it.
Now, I know that you're going to show us some things that are black and white. Do you use a lot of color in your palette?
I use color more in when I'm doing screen printing for my own other things. Also for letterpress because I think it's just a fun way to like layer the inks. I think I just fell into this hole where I use black a lot, but I like it. I always liked black ink on paper. It's just kind of, I love it. I don't know. Yeah, I love color though, and I love when other people use color.
Because actually, that was something that I added to the questions when I was thinking about it. So when you're doing your lino printing or letterpress, do you tend to use, I think you just answered that, but do you use more color? Or you tend to, it just depends on your mood, but letterpress, you said you like colors.
Yes, I like to use color in my letterpress because I feel like maybe I have less of like a definitive style or something. I'm still kind of working out the letterpress stuff in terms of using type and things like that. It can just be more experimental, whereas I think, especially with the lino cuts and this particular series, like they're all black and white, so I have made maybe one color, but it's just different. It's like they don't look the same, so it's just kind of like going in a different direction. But I would love to do more color or like introduce it slowly. I did do some last summer where I had a few, there was like a commission, and they did have some colors that needed to like match a paint color, which was cool. It was a cool challenge. So that was fun.
So we talked about lino printing, which I know a little bit more about. What is letterpress? Like, can you give us just a basic idea of what that means?
Yeah. So I guess the technical thing is letterpress is a relief process, and what makes it letterpress is just the machine that you're using to print. So this behind us is an etching press, and you could print lino blocks on it. You could print etching, like copper plates. You could print plate litho. It applies a lot of pressure, but usually the things that you're printing have to be quite thin. Whereas letterpress machines, they're basically just for relief. So only inking that very top surface of the plate, whatever it is, and they have an undercut to the bed that is a very specific height.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's really the main difference of like what you could call something being letterpress printed is just you used letterpress machines.
Interesting.
But it's a relief process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to show it to us afterward anyways, right? We're going to go a little walk.
Yeah.
So I noticed on your website when I was doing my homework that you've done a lot of traveling with all of things that you've learned or doing printmaking. Can I ask you about some of the places that you've shown your work?
Yeah. Where have I shown my work? I've done a couple of residencies where I've been like lucky to also show my work. So I mentioned just before the pandemic and after I graduated from my MFA, me and my partner went to Australia, and I was there for a while, and I did residency at the Fremantle Art Centre, so we lived in Perth, which is really cool. They have a cool printmaking prize every year, and got cut short because of the pandemic, but yeah, so I had that opportunity. When I was in undergrad, I got this crazy award where they sent a bunch of students to Russia.
Oh, wow.
So we got to do a trip to Russia, and we went to the Hermitage, and we had a little group show there. And then everything else that I've shown in mostly has been in the States, and a lot of the time it's also connected with doing an exchange, which we were just talking about. So yeah, printmaking exchange is like when a bunch of printers come together and they make an edition that's a certain size, and then they swap those prints. And so that's actually usually a really good way to also be a part of exhibitions, because they usually get shown. That's kind of like part of it.
Sure.
So I've done a bunch of those types of things in different states in America.
So which was your favorite place to show? Or
Yeah.
even if you were taking a residency, or you mentioned you've been to so many different ones,
Yeah.
which would you would say was your favorite? You can say you don't have one.
I don't have one. And well, now that I'm thinking about it harder, I've shown some other places in Canada, and I also did like a mail arts exchange thing that, again, like with the exchanges, you don't actually get to, you're not following them around. They're just, because I couldn't fly all over the place, but like that mail art one, it was just a postcard, and it went to England, and it's been shown in like a bunch of different libraries, which is really cool. So like the organizer keeps sending us emails like every it's been a couple of years, and every 6 months I swear she's like, we're showing it in this library, and here's a picture, which is really cool. I think that's cool. It's cool that your art can go places where you physically can't go. So.
But you got one in exchange.
That one was a weird one. No, we didn't, because
Okay.
it was just a postcard. Everyone just made one postcard and mailed it to this woman.
So then they collected them, and then that's like a traveling art show.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I noticed on your website, you can tell I did my homework. You have some short videos. Was that an early extension of the work that you do?
Yes, that was definitely like a grad school, try everything related to the kind of concept that you're working through. But I really like animation. It is incredibly time consuming, at least the way I was doing it at the time. But I think it shares a lot of similarities to printmaking, like in that it's very process based if you're doing it in an analog way, and that there's a lot of repetition, and a lot of time gets compressed into a very short experience for the viewer, and yeah, so I think I was just kind of interested in that aspect of animating things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about the Diner series, which is how I noticed you on Instagram. What inspired you to do that series?
Yeah, it was during the pandemic, and this studio, basically this was the only place that I could go besides my house, which was very lucky. And then there's a little diner over there on Niagara, and it's called UFO Restaurant. And we just went there every day, basically. And I just thought, this is such a weird building, and I love I've always loved old signs and like typography and stuff. So it's a really weird one, and the people that worked there were lovely. So I just did a carving of it, and then people really liked it. And so I was like, I'm going to do more of these because I like diners and people also like them. And it became a cool way to connect to different parts of the city. And I sort of, my thinking behind the series sort of came after I started making them. Like, I was like, what do I like about these? Like, obviously very grateful that they're open and these people are still providing this service to us, even like during the pandemic and before the pandemic when we would go there, like it was all just like community people. It was like an informal community center kind of, like everyone went there who lives in this little area, and like old people, young people, like students from the school across the street and stuff like that. So yeah, I just like that, and I was just thinking about that as a thing that we should treasure. Yeah.
So I know you have a couple prints. We chose a couple that you liked. So we just want to show you a couple of the prints that Phoebe did for this particular series. This was the diner series.
Yeah, so this was maybe like the second or third one I did. I also feel like I've kind of lived everywhere in Toronto at some point, like in an apartment. So during the pandemic, like at the beginning of 2020, we were living at DuPont and Walmart, so like near Spadina. And so Vesta Lunch was really close to there, so I did Vesta Lunch, and it's
this is the one at Bathurst and DuPont.
Yes, and it's all yellow and red. And there was actually another diner like just down Bathurst. Oh, it also had an amazing name that closed. I've always thought about doing it, but it's less on. I do love, in particular, ones that are on a corner. I don't know. They just look. It's fun to carve like that.
Yeah.
So that was that's an oldie. And I was making bigger ones at the time. I kind of, at some point, I did a smaller one, and then I was like, okay, I'm only going to do 8 by 10 from now on, which is a nice constraint. And you asked me to pull a couple. George Street Diner is on George. People are always like, where is it? I'm like, it's literally the only one that is called George Street. And I really like this people also ask me if I've eaten at every single one that I've carved, and no, I haven't, because some of them are, before, by the time I got to them, they were out of business kind of thing, or like people at markets and things, the best thing about it is people come up and make suggestions, or like they tell me all these stories about how their mom took them there for 30 years after school or whatever. But George Street is a diner that I do enjoy eating at. And I think it's cute. And Jim's is a good example of one that I've never been to, and it just doesn't even exist. It's now like a giant condo. So a lot of the time they'll go out of business, but the storefront will still be there or something, so I can still go and take a picture. But with Jim's, I had to like look on the internet for a picture of it. And use Google Maps and things like that. So, but I liked this one.
I liked everything, like all the different shapes that you have going on, aside from the straight lines for the diner itself, but all the different lines going on in there. It's kind of cool.
Thank you.
It actually looks great.
Yeah, so it's just became like it's fun to kind of work in the same series. I like to, maybe it's another printmaking thing. Like working in a series is nice to have to like think about the same subject, but variations of that subject multiple times.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure at some point you may add to it when you find a really cool other diner.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Any shows coming up?
What is coming up? Nope, just working on some exchange prints, and I'll be at the Grimsby Ways Goose, which is like Ways Goose is a book arts or letterpress kind of meetup fair extravaganza, and so it happens at the Grimsby Public Art Gallery, which is connected to the library. I think it's like April something. I don't know off the top of my head.
Well, if someone wants to know, they can look it up.
yeah. So kind of just gearing up for that.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to take us around and show us some of the things.
Sure.
Do you have any, I guess you can show us at the time some of the inks and materials that you use in your studio. I will mention before we go on, we do have a class with Phoebe coming up on March the 16th. I will tell you, unfortunately, it is already sold out. So if you are interested, I'm sure we'll be getting requests to do another class. And I'm sure all of you, now that you are hearing from Phoebe and seeing her studio, you're all going to be really psyched to get started in the class in a couple weeks. So now we'll let Phoebe take us around, and I think she's got a surprise for all of you to see while we're here. And now I'm going to give the floor to Phoebe. Well, actually, it's literally we're on the floor, but she's going to show us around this great studio.
So I'll show you kind of some of the inks that I use and what I use them for. I like to have different inks for different types of printing. Just to give you a little example. So I have with letterpress, so here, I'm going to show you something else. Jackie was asking about what is letterpress, and I think when people think of letterpress, they think of type, specifically like wood or metal type. So I have a big collection of wood and metal type that I've just kind of accumulated over the last whatever number of years, and I love it because it's kind of like working within the constraints. Everything is physical, spaces between letters, spaces between lines, and things like that. So you can plan something out, but when you actually get to like digitally or sketch it, but like when you get to the press, you often have to make concessions to the design based on like what you have. This is like a little poster. These are actually misprints, these ones. But this was a part of, it's a book that's going to be part of the Ways Goose anthology. So even though it's not an exchange, the edition was like 115, and then they get all the contributors, they make books from all of them, they bind them together. So that was all made with type, wood and metal type, from the collection there. But I also use it to make like posters that are fun. This was a commission that someone asked me to do for a wedding. This was just an experiment, and actually the background is lino, so you can mix like all the processes. I've mixed screen printing and letterpress, screen printing and lino, letterpress and lino. They play well together most of the time, but you do have to think about the types of ink that you use. So with letterpress or relief, some of my presses have inking rollers on them. So for those rollers, I tend to only stick to rubber-based inks, which are pretty common with letterpress printing. And I think in my undergrad at York, like we actually used rubber-based inks to print any relief. The nice thing about rubber-based inks is that they don't form a skin because in the can, so like they don't get a hard layer on top, because they dry through absorption. So you can't print on like acetate or glass; it would never dry. So that's the good thing about them, is that you can put them on the rollers on the press. You can like have a full day of printing. You can go out for a leisurely dinner, and then you can come back and clean the press or keep printing. Whereas oil-based inks, they dry through oxidation, so they dry faster, like out in the air. But you can print on coated papers or acetate, things that doesn't actually absorb the ink. It'll just take more time. So you would need to clean up kind of as soon as you're done printing. So they're good for different things. Sometimes I do use oil-based inks on the press, like on the press rollers. Oil-based inks are a lot more opaque. The pigments tend to be like stronger, whereas letterpress ink, the rubber-based inks are also like more transparent. So they, depending on the design, if you want that, it's nice. And then, yeah, I also really like putting gloves on because I'm not one of those people that all my ink cans are like beautiful. They are covered in ink, all of them. So I also really like to use the Cranfield Caligo Safe Wash inks. These are definitely like my preferred inks for teaching, especially in this studio, or like if anyone ever asked me questions about like printing at home. When I taught during the pandemic online, like this is always what I recommended because you can clean it up with soap and water, but like unlike other water-soluble inks that are like for this,
yes,
like relief printing, they have a really nice body, like they're not too liquidy, and I feel like others are either too liquidy or too dry, and so I just find that this one is the best. So I always suggest it. And I do actually get a lot of people messaging me being like, it's not working, like blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, have you tried this thing? Anyways, not sponsored, but I actually just like them.
Not at all. But we do carry the Cranfield inks, so it's a good thing for everyone to know.
Yeah. And yeah, so they're just awesome. If I have extra, and this is just like my pro tip, so I really like the stuff that comes, like if I was printing at home only, I would only have the stuff that came in a tube. Again, because if it does skin, it closes really tightly, and so you just don't waste as much. If you're printing all the time, night and day, then the can is good, but you kind of have to use it up quickly. And then if I have like lots extra on the after I'm done printing, or during a workshop, if someone like mixes way too much of what color or something, I've started putting them in tins,
Sure.
which is great. That's my little pro tip. And yeah, and I just find, because they clean up with soap and water, you don't have to like worry about using mineral spirits if you're printing at home, which is really nice. And yeah, good for your blocks. So for the block that we're going to print today, which is the Gwartzman's block that I carved for you guys, it looks nice and clean because I cleaned it up, and I usually take it with me to shows and show people like, this is what it actually looks like. So I'm just going to ink it by hand, even though you can see this is a Vandercook. So this is a pretty, if they have letterpress equipment in a school like at OCAD or Sheridan, they typically do have a Vandercook because it's super user-friendly. And so it does have inking rollers, but just for the purpose of this demonstration, I am going to hand ink. Yeah.
We'll get to see the expert at work. Do you find using gloves, does it take away from feeling what you're doing, or there's no issues with, you're just so used to it, you like to wear the gloves?
I literally just wear the gloves when I'm touching the ink cans or cleaning up. But then as soon as that's done, like even when I'm spreading out the ink with the brayer, I'm going to take the gloves off, because otherwise what ends up happening inevitably is like you have ink on your gloves and then it gets on the handle. Right. So yeah. And I always say that to my students too. So I'm going to print with the classic black. I guess I could print with a fun color, but... And I'm definitely, what I do like about printing on the letterpress with the inking system that it has is that, unlike printing by hand, when you're rolling up ink by hand, inevitably we are like a lot more heavy-handed than the rollers on the press, which just, they sit in a track, so it spreads a very thin, even amount of ink, whereas when you're inking anything by hand, it's kind of like subject to your own human error. But sometimes because I like the liner cuts to be like really black, I sometimes like ink with the press, and then I also have ink out on the slab, and I'll add a little extra.
Right.
like a velvety consistency.
Are you pushing really hard down on with the roller?
So it kind of depends, like you basically want to match your roller to the thing that you're printing. So if this lino that I use for most of my lino cuts, my own work, I use flooring linoleum, like literally the stuff that you might have in your bathroom, but smooth. And it comes on a roll, and I use that just because, again, it's hard, so it holds a lot of detail. Oh, look, see? Which I like, but because of that, you should use like a little bit of a harder roller. And so if you use a really soft, spongy roller, you're likely to get into the little, with mine, I use like a soft-ish, not super hard, whereas with like a soft cut or something, you can use a much harder roller.
Okay.
Like up there, I think those like red-handled ones, SD ones, like I almost never use those because I don't really carve that many things that are super soft, but they're really hard. Like they don't even really feel like printmaking rollers, and those are good for things like, eraser type consistency of roller. You want to build up the ink in layers. So rather than like put all the ink that you need on there at first, even if it feels like you're not actually applying any more ink, you are, but it's just slowly being built up rather than like starting all at once.
How many layers do you usually like to put down, or is it a feel?
It's a feel. It's a feel and it's a look. So this press, it won't apply as much pressure as the etching press. So you need a little bit more ink, or else the print's going to be a little bit salty. Which again, with certain things, it's kind of nice sometimes to have a little bit of salty texture. But if you're printing an edition and you want it to be like all of them look the same, it's impossible to emulate the exact same saltiness, which is just like that little speckle that you sometimes see. So I like more ink and less pressure. I think works well for lino.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. This is a test print. Might not work out. Let's see. We haven't pulled the print. This is live.
Well, that's half the fun.
Yeah. So hopefully the pressure is right, but we'll see. Looks good. There you go.
I think that looks pretty good.
Looks pretty good. Whew. It's not centered, but that's okay.
That looks great.
Yeah, and then obviously you just repeat that process. I feel like sometimes when I'm teaching a class and they're just doing this for the first time, they're like, wait, I have to ink it up every time I want to make a print. And I'm like, yes, I'm so sorry. But yeah, and so yeah, you can see why I like having an automatic print. So I kind of switched from printing on the etching press to printing on this press because I usually use the rollers, so I can print quite a bit faster.
And I was just going to point out, in case anybody had wondered about it, it's done backwards.
Yes.
So that when you print, you're going to see like the mirror image.
Yes.
Just in case anybody's wondering how they would, I guess would that be every time that you would do it that way?
Yeah.
Is it always done that way?
Yeah, unless you were doing a line of cut of something in a mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that it, like when people first start, their biggest thing is like, I can't think like backwards, or I can't, think inverted, because you're starting with a positive and your marks are taking things away, right? Like they're going to be white on a black background. And I think embracing the the black background is like a big key to success, and not trying to make it look like a drawing, like not trying to make it look like how we're used to drawing with a marker, like with something dark on white.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, this is great. It's so nice to end with something that everyone can see that Phoebe does. I mean, this is only, she's got her whole collection of diners. Of course, you can check out Phoebe's website and also on Instagram under Flycatcher Press. We do have our class coming up in a couple weeks, so any of you that signed up already, it's going to be great. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I haven't done really seriously any printmaking since grade 8, so this should be a lot of fun. And I'm really, really excited. But I wanted to thank you all for joining us today, for tuning in. I'm sure we've created a lot of questions that you have. So if you are interested in us doing another follow-up and we can do more with Phoebe, let us know. You can reach out to our info at Gwartzman's or through social media, whatever's best for you. Thank you, Phoebe.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've been talking about this for a long time and setting this up. I want to thank my staff who are busy behind the scene filming everything. You'll be able to, if you don't get to see it now, you will be able to get to see it. It'll be on YouTube and everywhere else that you can imagine that we're going to expose you to Phoebe and to Gwartzman's Art Supplies. Again, thank you very much for tuning in, and thank you for joining us for an Art Talk Wednesday outside the store. It's been great. Bye-bye for now. Thank you.